Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Castlevania Legacy of Darkness playthrough. Ted, you decided to rejoin us just as John had to leave, and also just in time to skip the most tedious half of Cornell's playthrough.
Yeah, well, I mean, have you ever seen me and John in the same place at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, multiple times. We've been to conventions together, dude.
There's a first-person mode in this.
Well, there's a first-person look button, but like every 3D game of the era had that, you know? It was just a thing that...
It's honestly, it's surprising. It's been a while since I've been able to watch. I'm shocked at how well this game runs. It's weird looking at N64 games run at more than 4 frames per second, honestly. What is Cornell's deal, since I wasn't here for the first half of this?
Okay, so to recap, Cornell is a part of the Man-Beast tribe. They're sort of were-people. Werewolves, or werewolves with an A, as Ortega will say in a future part at some point.
So, like, werewolves?
Werewolves is in warehouse. they misspell werewolf in this in the English version of this. It's
they're wolves who want to sell you their wares.
Werewolf sounds like business scrub or something, like a Zelda character you'd find running a stall in some backwoods dungeon. You know, the funniest version of that I've ever encountered is actually in Morrowind, where there's this random mud crab. Mud crabs are like little weakling monsters that you can fight at basically any level, but there's one specific mud crab in Morrowind that is a merchant. It's like hidden away on an island somewhere, and it will sell you stuff. It's very strange. And many players have accidentally killed it, not knowing that it was a merchant. But
Wow.
back to Cornell. Cornell is a man-beast. He's part of a tribe that sealed away their transformation powers years and years and years ago, to prevent them from being used. But he is like the one man-beast who's managed to train himself through what the game repeatedly calls ascetic training. I had to look that word up to know what it means, by the way. And he's the only one who can manipulate his seal so that he can activate his powers. So what that means is you can actually turn into a werewolf at any time. You can't transform back until you run out of hearts, though, and your hearts will tick down 1 per second until you run out of fuel and your werewolf form ends. It's just a massive buff to your attack power, though. And also a cool-looking transformation, admittedly. But god damn it, camera. Turn the other way.
I do know that the werewolf is, like, on the cover of the box, so that... Was he in the original version of the game, or just the Legacy of Darkness port?
No, he was not in the original. He was planned for the original, but he's one of the 2 campaigns that was not included in the final release. So this is kind of like cut content being repurposed and reimagined. Although I'm not sure if Cornell was originally supposed to be a prequel story like he is here or not. But in any case, the level we're playing now is the Art Tower. This is one of 3 Cornell exclusive levels. What you missed in the last few parts, Ted, were the rather tedious remixed versions of the castle wall and villa stages that Cornell has to go through. You know how Carrie and Reinhardt have this Resident Evil-like villa stage where they're going through a mansion and finding keys and opening doors, right? But it was, still relatively linear and inoffensive, except for the part where you had to meet Rosa in the Rose Garden at a specific hour of the day. Well, Cornell has that level, except his objectives are all scattered around, and it's incredibly tedious to play through on a blind run. So, congratulations on not having to sit through that. I just realized I missed a holy water. God damn it.
You already have the holy water.
No, I mean, I have level 2 holy water. I only need one more holy water to reach the maximum level of holy water. And I missed one. It was right there in the nook, right at the edge of the screen, and I just didn't see it while I was playing. God damn it.
There's a time limit in this game, right? Like, if you take too long, you get the bad ending.
Not in Cornell's story. Cornell's story doesn't have that issue, which makes it very confusing that they built an entire level around using Sun and Moon keys in his campaign. It's like they realized halfway through that they had included the Sun and Moon key mechanic, and then they're like, wait, if we don't do something with the ending, then we're gonna have to build a level, otherwise this mechanic is utterly worthless.
So it just means that you have to sit through this animation of the clock zooming forward every time you want to go through one of these doors. What's going on. Neat.
To be fair, the day-night cycle does affect the attack strength and maybe the health of enemies. So enemies are generally weaker during the day, which means while you're playing as Cornell, you can, if you want, just keep it daytime whenever most of the time, unless you need to get through a moon door. But I don't really bother because the enemies aren't actually that much harder at night. It's not like Simon's Quest where you start with a weak-ass leather whip and enemies take like 10 hits to kill at night. No. Your attacks are pretty strong, even at night.
Having range like that definitely makes it seem... Because I don't remember Reinhardt having that kind of range. In the first couple parts of this.
He doesn't have that much range. He has enough range with his whip, and it does get a little longer when you get his whip upgrades. But his whip is, just one long hitbox when you use it. So it's not a projectile like this one, and that actually makes it easier to hit things, in my experience.
Oh, because you can't really, miss. If they walk into it after the fact, they'll still get hurt.
Yes. Cornell's campaign is just kind of tedious to get through. Fortunately, the villa is behind us, and there is one thing that I will say. I'm not sure if I said this because we did an entire Princess Peach Showtime commentary between parts 3 and 4 of this playthrough, but Cornell's villa pissed me off way more than Castle Center, even though Castle Center is the level that everyone apparently hates. And I'm just like, guys, have you played Cornell's campaign?
You know what? Here's my highly controversial guess. My answer is no. They probably haven't. They probably, because a lot of people only really played Castlevania 64, and even then, this is still one of the least played Castlevania games.
Yeah.
Hold on. Do they have sales numbers of this, of these going on? I'm actually going to...
I doubt it, because Konami's usually pretty tight-lipped about exact sales numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, I could probably find VG charts, which is always, kind of a very ballpark sort of actually, no, VG charts doesn't even really have it up from what I can see. Hold on. Yeah, no, they don't have any numbers. Yeah, so who knows? Not great sales numbers. We know that, because otherwise the series probably would have looked more like this going forward, I would have had to imagine.
Well, I mean, you might think so, but after, not counting Symphony of the Night, the sales numbers for the Metroidvanias also kind of declined after a while.
Yeah, I mean, they were also Game Boy games and DS games, and they obviously did well enough to keep going, and for for Iga to keep making them, because you don't make 6 games in a row without them being successful enough to at least pay for themselves,
Well, yeah, but it was those declining sales that resulted in us not getting more games after Order of Ecclesia, which was unfortunate.
Order of Ecclesia was also received pretty well too.
Oh yeah, it was a critical darling, as I remember. It's just that it didn't sell very well, and around that same time, I think Castlevania Judgment happened. Ugh.
Oh yeah, but, I know. Castlevania Judgment also has its issues for sure.
That's certainly a way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know that Castlevania in the mid 2000s definitely was undergoing somewhat of a identity crisis. Part of it definitely is just the fact that, like, the Igavania games were not considered lesser, but they certainly were not a priority because, those are small Game Boy games, and the real quotation mark games are the ones that are on consoles, which is always a mindset that I've disliked vehemently, but that's besides the point.
Well, I mean, even Igarashi himself was not exactly immune to that mindset, because he put a lot of effort into Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness, and at the time, those were
involved with those.
Yeah. So it's why they lean into the Igavania blueprint for a lot of their design, rather than, trying to frickin' ape this shit. The thing about Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness, though, is that, for as much as he wanted those to be the main attraction, the games just wasn't it, they were extremely bare bones in terms of game design. I mean, you would expect, there's a vampire maid bearing down on me as I try to save my game. Okay, sure. You would expect a PlayStation 2 game to have more going on in terms of environmental graphics than this room we're staring at right now. But this room we're staring at right now, honestly, a lot of Curse of Darkness doesn't look much better than what we're looking at now. It's actually kind of strange. Yeah, there's better textures and stuff, but everything is so wide open and square. Actually, the Art Tower is a good example of what Curse of Darkness looks like in action. Just these big, bland, square hallways. And Lament of Innocence wasn't much better, although it did do more with camera angles to at least make itself look interesting. All of that hard work to make itself look interesting was immediately undone by how bland and copy-pasted the level design was.
Yeah, I think it was just a hard time. I feel like there's not a sense of cohesion among Castlevania. I mean, the game industry itself also wasn't very cohesive in general at this point. People were just doing whatever they wanted, really. But everything Castlevania was so different around this time. The Game Boy games and the console games, and then they would make Judgment, which has a vastly different art style, and then there would be the Lords of Darkness a couple years after this.
Lords of Shadow.
Lords of Shadow, excuse me.
And that was actually, I think, the best-selling Castlevania game at the time.
Yeah, but it definitely was not. I think that's probably more just due to budget and marketing, because I know that in terms of...
Oh, no.
Look, it's Phantom of the Opera. God damn it, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I have to manually run across this because we don't have a dedicated balancing function. And I remember during Reinhardt's playthrough, I said that games should let us do this more often. Not like this, please. This is not fun. This is actually just really annoying and nerve-wracking, and I can't position the camera precisely enough behind me.
Oh yeah, you can't have it be straightforward.
There we go.
You see, this is the one instance where the N64 having those little notches in the joystick area is really helpful, because then you're pushing straight up. But there isn't one for exactly, what is this, like 11 degrees to the right or whatever.
This is like, the reason this is a problem is because the N64 didn't have a camera stick. It just had a camera reset button. So I have to already be facing the direction I want the camera to go exactly, which means I already have to be facing the exact angle of this rope, which means...
You're not even this is another thing I love about N64 games. Your idle standing animation has him straddling the rope, so he should be falling down and landing on his crotch like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Oh man, yeah. I love video games.
Thankfully, they put a save point like right at the bottom of this room and right at the top. So as soon as you get to the other side, you can just save. Thank you.
They knew what they were doing. Oh, okay, but then they can have this one be just wide enough for you to not have to worry about it immediately after.
Well, this is a minecart track.
Oh, okay.
The danger here is that there's a flaming minecart in here for some reason. What reason? I couldn't tell you. Creature of chaos.
I mean, so the thing is that, like, Castlevania normally at least, like, makes sense in the sense that, like, all of the different areas serve a purpose. Like, oh, there's a ballroom, there's a dungeon, I guess having a coliseum in your random castle is a little bit far-fetched. You know, man, this vampire game's so unrealistic. 0 out of 10.
Well, the flaming minecart room leads directly into the Tower of Ruins level, so maybe it has something to do with this architectural dig that we're going through. Part of the understated but interesting story behind this version of Dracula's castle is that it seems to be tied to Gilderay, or I pronounced it correctly last session 2 months ago, but Gilderay, whatever. The thing about that character and his accomplice actrice is that they are like Elizabeth Bartley and Brauner from Portrait of Ruin. They're adaptations of historical figures.
Oh, really? Those guys are... I didn't know that those guys from Portrait of Ruin were historical figures.
Well, just Brauner, specifically. But, like, I'm not sure what Brauner did to be portrayed as a vampire. Like, I have literally no idea if he did anything wrong. Elizabeth Bartley, or Bathory, who also happens to be the antagonist of Castlevania Nocturne, so that's interesting. She was, I think, one of the original inspirations for Dracula.
There is a real life historical Dracula called who was a count in that area of the world many years ago, but he obviously wasn't a real
vampire. Yeah,
as far as we know, you know.
I think it was Ivan the Terrible was his name.
No, there was like a Count Drac or something like that. Hold on a moment.
I think, yeah, maybe, but that would have just been a name that he took.
So, you know, I know this because there's an Age of Empires 2 DLC campaign called, here we go, Vlad Dracula. There's a campaign for him where he is a, hold on a moment. I'm trying to find the actual, there was a real life House of Draculesti back in the day, and they fought the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, Vlad, yes, that is, you're right, Ryan. It's Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Tepes.
Vlad Tepes, believe it or not, was not the inspiration for Dracula and was not intended to be taken as the guy who was Dracula. That was just sort of superimposed onto Dracula after the fact. But here's the thing, okay? Gilderay, the Duray guy, Gilderay, and actrice were serial killers. They were nobles and serial killers, essentially. I'm not sure if, like, I think they killed children, but then I might be crossing my wires with what happens in this game. But the point is, there were a couple of different historical figures, including Elizabeth Bathory, who were accused of and were found guilty of such heinous crimes that rumors of them being involved in vampirism arose around such figures. And those sorts of historical figures played a part in inspiring Dracula. So it is only fitting that Castlevania brings such characters into the story at some point. Bloodlines did it with Elizabeth Bathory, and Castlevania Nocturne is bringing her back, so that's fun. This game tried the same thing with Gil de Rais, and it's so understated that it's actually kind of funny.
Okay, hear me out. Jack the Ripper, but he's a vampire. Actually, that's probably been done before. That's, like, super low-hanging fruit.
Was Jack the Ripper, like, aristocratic?
We don't know. Well, that's the thing about Jack the Ripper is that nobody knows for sure who he was. There's a million different conspiracy theories about who Jack the Ripper was. I believe one of the popular ones is that he was the son of someone noble at that time, like even a specific prince. I'm not, like, huge into Jack the Ripper, so I don't know a lot of the details, but it certainly is a common theory that he was someone of the aristocracy, Castlevania.
Yeah, it's an interesting story element. It's also something that I found retroactively interesting because I wasn't aware of it at the time that I watched Netflix Castlevania. But there's a character in the 3rd season called the Judge, and he's portrayed to the audience and to the characters for most of the season as being, you know, a stand-up guy. Like he's the leader of this town. And he's doing, and he wants to, like, get rid of the cult the Dracula cult that's taking root there, because, you know, Dracula cult, not such a good thing. And you know, he works with Trevor and Sypha. He works with them for a while, and you know, they kind of make friends with the guy. And then, like, at the end, after the guy is already dead, mind you, they discover that he was actually luring children into a pit trap, killing them, and stealing their shoes as trophies. The guy was twisted. He was like a small-time aristocratic type fellow who was a serial killer that killed children. And it didn't hit me until I was researching these two vampires that, wait, the Netflix Castlevania show brought that up because of the historical significance of similar figures to vampire mythology. Wow.
So is there a... I haven't watched that far. I've only watched the first 2 seasons of the Castlevania Netflix show. Is there, like, a significance to that? Like, to that character being a twisted asshole after the fact? Or... It
kind of sends Sypha Belnade spiraling into a furious, depressive episode of cynicism. But it's one of the several things that never really got properly resolved in Season 4, because they kind of skip over the interesting part where the characters spend time confronting it.
Oh, okay. So that... all right. So there's a point to it, because... Okay, so this reminds me of a plot point in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Now, forgive me for any inaccuracies here. I haven't played the game in a few years. My memory on it is a little fuzzy. But there is this serial killer guy who's one of the mannequin people. And he's killing, you know, a bunch of the mannequins, and you have to stop him. And then there's this guy who's the leader of the town who ends up being killed by this serial killer guy. Later on, when you're doing the optional Lucifer dungeon, which was added in the Maniacs port / Western port featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, little boy Lucifer ends up telling you that, oh, turns out that the serial killer guy back before the world destroyed was this stand-up dude, and that the guy who ran the town was actually a serial killer before the world ended. And I have issues with Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, enough to go on a whole other tangent, but it just never made much sense to me why they bring that up, because you hear this plot, you hear this exposition potentially hours and hours and hours after you have already gone through this plot point, because you can do the Lucifer dungeon at whatever pace you want.
Yeah.
And so it was really like strange and weird for me when playing that to be like, okay, that's screwed up, but does it change anything? It doesn't really change anything about the story, or even really have anything to do with what Lucifer. Well, what Lucifer is trying to tell you at that point is that what you did in your past life will effectively mean nothing, because God hates you and wants you to die because you're part demon. That's what he wants you to think. He seems to ignore the fact that he's only part demon, that the main character is only part demon because Lucifer made you part demon. So if God hates you, it's his fault. But, Lucifer's an asshole. And, I could go on a tangent. But anyway, it's disappointing to me that they don't flesh that out, because I do think that you can do something interesting with the story where you like this guy dies, you find out after the fact that he was screwed up. Like, you can do something interesting with that. It's just disappointing that for other reasons, the Netflix Castlevania show didn't really get to go. Sorry, the Fleaman just rhythmically jumping over your projectile attack like that. That's another reason that like maybe Reinhardt's a little better, because his attack has like a from above arc. Anyway, the Tower of Ruins level, which we're not going to see all of this part, it's actually quite long, is an interesting little unique level that only Cornell gets to play, where you have to physically look down on these stone slab maps in every other room to get your bearings and find your way around. And like, you saw me probably running around the edges of certain rooms while I was in here. That's because the big empty rooms with no enemies in them generally have pitfall traps in their floors. They collapse underneath your feet, and you end up in the underground. And then at the end of the level, I completely forgot that the last button to unlock the last door to the second half of the level is underground, and you have to fall down a specific pit to get to it. Fortunately, the map does show you where it is. You just have to realize that the maps that have been that the squares that have been colored like a different color than the others are the rooms where the buttons are. You see, this is where my JRPG completionism would come into play, because I'm the kind of person who would jump down every single pit on purpose in Etrian Odyssey so that I could make sure that my map was fully completed. Because God forbid I have an empty square. No way. Not doing that.
In any case, it's a pretty good level. I
like the music. From what I remember, there wasn't the music didn't leave a lot of impression from Reinhardt's playthrough, but this track's pretty nice. It's got a great like xylophone backbeat.
I would hope so. It's also the title screen music. For some reason, the Tower of Ruins. Yeah, for some reason they used the Tower of Ruins music for the title screen instead of that wonderful violin piece.
That's I don't know if that's weirder, or having like in Zelda the Wind Waker having one of the random songs that unlocks like the 5th dungeon is weirder. Certainly a strange choice or nothing else.
Yeah. Well. This is the end of the first half of the level. The second half of the level, well, I'll have a bit to say about that next part. Ugh.